right, today we are in southern Indiana at the Bloomington Historical Center, and we're going to be learning about a guy named Big Dave around here who just happened to be the tallest man in the Union Army during the Civil War. Here at the Monroe County History Center, they actually have things of Big Dave on display, a few items here, and to talk about that is none other Steve Rolfe, who is an expert, from what I've been told, in Big Dave.
Big Dave has always been a very important character in our community here because not only was he a great Union soldier, but he is the I want to say mascot of our Civil War Roundtable here. I am also the president of the Monroe County Civil War Roundtable, and the 27th Indiana Infantry, of which Big Dave was a member, Company F was mostly from Monroe County, Indiana. And he grew up here, he went to war, he came back, he lived the rest of his life here, and he is buried here in the county, which we may get into later, but anyhow, these are some of the things that we have in the museum that are remembrances of Big Dave, most of which were donated by his great-granddaughter, Patsy Powell. Patsy was a wonderful lady. She passed away a few years ago. She was a wonderful lady who introduced us all to Big Dave over the years. And I'll just show you some of the things that we have. We have here a picture which shows you the comparative size of him. He was nearly 7 feet tall in his stocking feet, as they always said. And that picture is a couple of normal-sized men. And he also weighed about 385 pounds when he went into service in the Civil War, which was in 1861. Next to that, we have here an epaulet from his uniform. And I'm not an expert on epaulets, but I think this one is even a little bit big because he had very broad shoulders. And this epaulet would be one made in a uniform that was specifically for him. And then the other item that we have here on the table, two items if you want to call it that way, is the sword and the scabbard. Now, most swords were actually ceremonial in the Civil War for officers. They were rarely used actually in battle, although they were, and if they were used in battle, they were usually used to slap someone rather than to stick someone. But anyhow, this is his ceremonial sword. This was passed down to Patsy through the years with her family, and we've had it here for many, many years now. And the last thing that we have over here is a chair that belonged to Big Dave, and it is an oversized chair because he was an oversized man. This was something that he probably had after the war because he grew up in the northwest part of Monroe County, Indiana, and he lived here, as I say, until his death when he was about 60 years old. The chair is a cane chair. It's not in very good shape. They wouldn't let me, they would croak if I sat on it, but it's a very good representation of his size at the time. He was recruited along with a number of other people. At the beginning of the Civil War, and this would have been in 1861, there was a mad rush for people to form regiments, units to go off to war. And there was so many people wanting to do this that there was almost a competition for it. And everybody needed a gimmick. And the gimmick for the 27th Indiana Infantry Company F, which gained the nickname the Monroe Grenadiers after they got into service, was that they were going to recruit a number of soldiers. All the soldiers were going to be huge, big. And of course, Big Dave was one of the first people they thought of. Everyone knew him. He was well known in the county, and he was, again, almost 7 feet tall in his stocking feet, weighed about 385 pounds when he went into service. And they recruited this unit, and over half of the men were over 6 feet tall in Company F of the 27th Indiana Infantry. And the theory was that they would be so large that they would go out and they would scare the bejesus out of the rebels, that they would throw their arms down on the ground and run in fear. It didn't exactly work out that way. Because during one of the biggest engagements of the 27th, which was at Gettysburg, on the morning of July 3rd, 1863, Big Dave and the 27th Indiana, along with the 2nd Massachusetts, charged across an open field. I won't get into details about the battle, but they were asked to charge across an open field and attack a bunch of Alabamians and Virginians that were behind rocks and trees on the other side of the field. And these people from Alabama and Virginia had to be absolutely thrilled because they looked up and it was a turkey shoot. Here were these huge people they couldn't miss running at them. 385 men of the 27th Indiana made that charge, and they made it about halfway before the fire was too intense and they had to turn around and go back. During that charge, Big Dave was not wounded. He was able to make it back okay, but there were 8 flag bearers. And I say 8, there was really only 1 flag bearer in a regiment, but there were 8 men who had to pick up the flag. 4 of them were killed in the charge and 4 of them were wounded before they finally turned around and made it back to the safe harbor. Big Dave was actually captured once in the First Battle of Winchester, and he was sent to Libby Prison in Richmond, Virginia. And he was with a number of other people, but he was clearly a sort of a freak of nature in Libby Prison. And as I said, he weighed 385 pounds when he went into service, and most people think of prisoners of war as being emaciated. When Big Dave got there, he became such a, what do I want to say, a piece of information that people could just chatter about and gossip about and everything. And he started bartering with the guards. And he would barter with the guards, and they would bring him extra food if he would allow himself to be shown, and he did. And so he left Libby Prison weighing over 400 pounds than when he went in. That was very unusual. He was exchanged in a prisoner exchange just a few months after he went there. The 27th went on to fight at other battles in the war, and then they were disbanded in early 1865, and he came home to live out his life in Monroe County, where he was a public servant, a model citizen, and he is, as I say, he's still here with us now. He's buried in the northwest part of our county.
All right, so now we're at the cemetery of David Van Buskirk, and it's just unbelievable that this entire cemetery here is full of family members, and the amount of family members that have served in different conflicts. I mean, we have Revolutionary War, we have the Civil War. I believe Steve said that we have someone from the American-Spanish War in here. I mean, the family was very, dedicated to their their country, to their state, and their community as well.
When I bring people out to this cemetery to show them Captain Van Buskirk, or as we like to call him, Big Dave's grave, and the other things that are here, I like to point out to them that this is an extremely remote part of Monroe County, Indiana. It's in the very northwest corner. It's not visible from any roads. It's not a public cemetery. It's not a church cemetery. It's a private cemetery. It's a burial ground that was developed by this family and these other families that have used it over the years back in the early 19th century. And Big Dave has all three of his wives buried alongside him here. His last wife outlived him by many years, but there are also a lot of other of his comrades in arms, members of the 27th Indiana, and members of other groups. Almost all of these people, as far as I know, are related. They either married into the family, or they were cousins, or whatever. They're all part of the family group. Other names that are involved here are Wampler. We're looking at the Byers Monument right here, Abel, and it's been here, like I say, for that long, since the early 19th century. It is technically still an active cemetery. However, most people decline to use this as their resting place because it is so remote. And if you want to have family visit you, this is just not a good place to do that. But it's a wonderful cemetery, and actually there are a lot of military graves, as Alex has pointed out here. And we had one person that was a member of the family, a descendant in the Indianapolis area, point out that this at one time was called the Arlington of the West because of the percentage of military graves that were in this cemetery. And of course he was referring to Arlington National Cemetery in the DC area back east. But it's a very pleasant place to spend a few minutes. It's on the highest point in this part of the county, overlooking the White River. I like to tell people that if you stand up and fall down twice, you're probably either in Owen County or Morgan County. We are that close to the upper corner of Monroe County, Indiana, but it is in Monroe County. And I think that it has undergone a lot of renovation in the last 20 years. But as with all things that sit out in the weather, it's also starting. That renovation stopped about 20 years ago, and there are some places that are starting to deteriorate again, and there is no known plan that I know of now, other than the Monroe County History Center always is aware of cemeteries that need work, and they can sometimes put people on this, so I don't know if that'll happen or not. Yeah, there are other family members here. There are children of all ages. I was just talking to Alex about the fact that if you want a story about Big Dave and what his service in the Civil War meant to him, he had a daughter who the person that I knew that was maintaining the cemetery, Patsy Powell, his great-granddaughter, knew as Aunt Getty. And she knew her as Aunt Getty until she was an older teenager, and she found out one time that her full name was Gettysburg Van Buskirk. And that's what the Battle of Gettysburg and his service in the Union Army and the Civil War meant to him. He named his daughter after a battle that he fought in, because he did fight at Gettysburg in 1863. But it's a wonderful place. If you ever want to see it, you just need to contact me and I'll bring you up here. It's just a nice place to be. A cemetery is a way for these folks and for all of us to touch the past. And that's what we all look for if we're interested in history, ways that we can actually touch the past, either physically or at least emotionally sometimes. And that's what cemeteries do for us. I also have something else here that's interesting. This was given to me by a collector here in Bloomington many years ago. And it is a check. When David Van Buskirk came back from the Civil War, he spent the rest of his life doing public service. I think he had one elected office, he did other jobs for the county, but anyhow, here, and I don't know exactly why this was written, but this is a check written on November the 5th, 1869 to David Van Buskirk for $60.71, drawn on the Monroe County Treasury. And when you turn it over here, it has his signature on the back. So again, this to me is a way to touch the past. And I've valued this as long as I've had it, and we'll keep it forever.